5 Live Formula One.
Hello, good morning to you. Welcome to live coverage of round 3 of the Formula One World Championship, where the circus has headed to hallowed ground in Suzuka for the Japanese Grand Prix. And ahead of us, that all-important qualifying, with it looking like an intra-team battle at Mercedes brewing for pole. But you still have to put together a lap when it counts. And at a challenging track like this, it can come undone so easily for any driver. The green light then just a few minutes away. Guiding you through every step of the way from the commentary box is myself, Harry Benjamin, but keeping her ear to the ground for us down in the paddock, let's say good morning to Jenny Gow.
Good morning. What a lovely view I have over the grandstands, which are packed full of very polite fans who are just cheering and clapping as the end of the titles begin for F1. To their left, there's a giant wheel like the London Eye, but here at Suzuka Circuit. And underneath that, there's a ride, a roller coaster ride, which at the moment, the outside track is leading, but the inside track is getting closer. My word, Harry, you would have fun commentating on that. But qualifying, as you say, is about to begin, and I wonder who will be a roller coaster for, all of them, or will someone possibly walk it?
Quite possibly. Alongside me in the commentary box is British racing driver Alice Powell, and it does seem, Alice, from the 3 practice sessions that it's Mercedes out in front, but we could be treated to quite a fight between the two.
We could, but Kimi Antonelli, we're going by the last free practice session, 2.5 tenths clear he was of George Russell. Looks like his win at China has given him even more speed out on track. He's full of confidence. It's going to be close between those two, and then you're looking down at 3rd, 4th, 5th, you're thinking, you would think from last time out, well, Ferrari will have that, but the McLarens seem to have found a little bit of pace, or it's that Ferrari have lost pace. Well, one of the two, but hopefully McLaren will have no more woes, because obviously we saw Lando Norris did at least the last 20 minutes of the 3 practice session due to an issue. But we have got an exciting qualifying ahead, maybe between just the 2 Mercedes for pole, but it is pretty close further down the field.
Yeah, grandstands absolutely packed out around this just over 5.8 kilometre track, 18 turns, 10 which head to the right, 8 which head to the left. It's a challenging circuit, isn't it, Alice? But why is it one that pretty much everybody loves?
It's got a little bit of everything, and as Jenny mentioned earlier about a roller coaster, well, this certainly is one. You start at the very bottom of the circuit all the way up through 3, 4, 5, 6, left, right, and then you come back down into the Degners, Degner 1, Degner 2, where we've seen plenty of drivers go off in the past. Alex Albon touched the wall, didn't he, on turn 9, that's Degner 2 earlier on. And then, of course, one of the drivers' favourites, Spoon, that's 13, 14 on the circuit. We saw Ollie Behrman had a neat spin on the exit of 14 and caught it, and then through, of course, 130R, where we've seen them go faster through there in previous years. They are having to obviously harvest and regenerate energy due to these new regulations, but it's just a special track, and the fans are fantastic, the atmosphere's awesome, and hopefully we've got an exciting qualifying lined up.
As the drivers settle into the cockpits of their cars, last few adjustments for Oscar Piastri in his McLaren, as Max Verstappen in the Red Bull just has his headrest removed and gets buckled in, and a couple of tweaks being made for his comfort before he heads out onto the circuit. About a minute away from the green light and getting Q1 underway with 22 cars set to take part. Coming into round 3 after 2 Grand Prix and a sprint race so far in 2026. This is how the championship standings are looking, and the drivers, George Russell leads the way with wins in Australia and the Chinese sprint, meaning he has 51 points to his name. He is 7 ahead of Kimi Antonelli, who took his first Grand Prix victory a couple of weeks ago in China. Then it's Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, the 2 Ferrari drivers, a few points further back, and actually just a point between them as well for 3rd and 4th, with Ollie Behrman rounding out the top 5, and Lando Norris, the reigning world champion, in 6th. Over in the Constructors' Championship, it is Mercedes who lead the way with 98 points. They're 31 clear of Ferrari. McLaren 3rd, with Haas actually up in 4th. Red Bull 5th, then it's Racing Bulls in 6th. Alpine, Audi and Williams make up the top 9. They're your point scorers, with the newest kids on the block, Cadillac, still yet to score points, along with Aston Martin with their well-documented struggles with the Honda engine. And of course, eyes on them this weekend to try and deliver something, anything, at their home track for Honda. This, the Honda-owned circuit, and originally a Honda test track, as one of the Aston Martins, indeed both of them, Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso, head out onto the circuit. Green light is on then, and 17.5 minutes already on the clock as we look to eliminate the slowest drivers from this session. And out onto the track, heading up through the S's, is the Racing Bulls of Liam Lawson. It's a tight midfield pack. We'll come on to that, Alice. But you mentioned there, particularly the McLarens. Lando Norris has had a really troubled weekend with reliability. Oscar Piastri's looked quick, though. So too has Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton's been struggling with balance. Could we see a nip and tuck battle there between the Ferraris and the McLarens, just behind the Mercedes?
No, I think we certainly could. It was close between them. Charles Leclerc seems to have the pace in the Ferrari comparing to his teammate Lewis Hamilton. He was a 10th quicker than him. So Charles was third, Lewis was fifth in last practice session, and then it was about a 10th off was Oscar Piastri of Charles Leclerc. And Lando Norris, I think he did a pretty decent job, really. He only did, as we've mentioned, the last sort of 20 minutes of the free practice session. He was a couple of tenths behind Lewis Hamilton. Watch out for the Audis. We're talking about people to chuck in there. Okay, it was only practice, but they've kind of sort of been there or thereabouts inside that top 10. And actually, Nico Hülkenberg was only a few hundredths behind Lando Norris. Max Verstappen was in 8th, and then Bortoleto was a few tenths behind his teammate. So Audi seemed to be doing pretty decent here.
Absolutely, with 60 minutes on the clock. And on Audi, since Bortoleto and Hülkenberg became teammates last season, they're actually tied 13-all in their qualifying head-to-head battles, which is intriguing for both the German and the Brazilian. But right now, a few cars out on track. As we look to eliminate the slowest 6 drivers from this session. With just over 15 minutes on the clock. First flying laps being done. Everybody out there on the soft tyre. Pirelli bringing the hardest trio in the range. The C3, the soft tyre. First port of call in this session for most. Conditions starting to cool, though, today. And this first bit of qualifying. Air temperature 16.4 degrees, track temperature 31.3 degrees. As Liam Lawson comes in to the final chicane and will complete his outlap and gear up and head across the line. The active aero, the straight line mode, which sees the front and the rear wing activates as he heads across the line, and the first lap on the board for him, a 1:31.785. His teammate Arvid Lindblad follows and goes quicker with a 1:31.634. So I suppose another thing to watch out for, Alice, is track evolution here. How much will that impact qualifying?
Yeah, no, well, we've had a support session out on track before this qualifying session, and I would have cleaned the track up a little bit, but I believe it was GT cars, and they usually like to chuck some gravel onto the circuit. So track evolution will be a massive thing here. It always has been, and particularly with this new surface we've got down. As Max Verstappen heads out on a brand new set of soft tyres in his Red Bull. But touching back, I want to Liam Lawson, who's again behind his teammate, and it's actually 12 months since obviously he made that step down from the number 1 Red Bull team, should we say, even though they're tied on points at the moment in the championship. Yeah, so he'll be looking to try and out-qualify his teammate, because his rookie teammate Lindblad, I think, is doing a fantastic job at the moment as we're riding on board with one of the McLarens, which will be Oscar Piastri, going across to start his first flying lap, flying into turn 1.
Plunges downhill into the double right-hander that makes up turns 1 and 2 with deploy, and Piastri has been deploying quite a lot of battery on that start-finish straight, which then just means he has to do a little bit more lift and coasting up through the S's, left, then right again, up towards Dunlop Curve as it starts to arch uphill towards the left-hand side, carries as much speed as he can before he then turns it into the first Degner, quick right-hander, followed by another one onto the throttle. Slight curve through to the right-hand side before he slams on the brakes into the hairpin at turn 11. Undulation sees that McLaren pitched slightly off camber on the exit as he now swings round through the right-hand sweep that leads you all the way to Spoon Curve, a double left-hander. Seen the wind actually really cause and catch a few drivers out, cause them to run wide. Not such the case for Piastri on that occasion. Bit of traffic in the form of the Alpine. Now he's heading down the stretch towards 130R. Turn 15, a left-hander, fastest of anybody through the middle sector. Final chicane to go, the Casio triangle, clips the curb at 16, then into the left, hits the curb again, slightly unsettles the car, bit of adjustment on the steering wheel, keeps it as flat as he can through the final kink, and across the line for Oscar Piastri, and it's a 1:30.438 for the Australian. His teammate will follow him next across the line, Lando Norris, about 2/10 adrift. It's the two McLarens, 1 and 2 in these early stages.
Yeah, well, look out for Charles Leclerc, fastest of anybody in that first sector. It was Lewis Hamilton that had that, but his teammates quickly taken that away, and I expect the Ferrari to jump up in the mix with the McLarens. We'll have a look as Lewis Hamilton goes across the line, just over 1/10 of a second off Oscar Piastri, but Charles Leclerc is looking on a very decent lap. Of course, we're waiting for the Mercedes to come out because we're likely to see them jump to the top of the times as well. So have a look, Charles Leclerc across the line and 3.5 clear of Oscar Piastri.
Charles Leclerc has 2 front row starts at Suzuka but has never achieved pole position. Might be a little bit of a stretch for him today, but in this first session we're just over 10.5 minutes left off Q1. We'll look to eliminate the slowest 6 drivers, but as you say, Alex, we've yet to see the 2 Mercedes first cards dealt, and Antonelli on his way to delivering the first lap as he now makes his way up through the S's. Of course, became the youngest pole sitter in Formula One history in the last round in China. And no Italian has ever taken pole in Suzuka before. Can Kimi Antonelli continue his good form so far? He's well up on the time to get outside of Q1, which is currently only Sergio Perez occupying with the first lap time. Bottas, Alonso, Stroll, all on their way to setting their first laps. Everybody else with their first benchmark time.
Yeah, and he's going to get a little bit of traffic, but they all move out of his way. So we're having it. So both Mercedes are on a hot lap at the moment, and having a look, it is Antonelli that is a good 0.4 of a second quicker in the first sector alone, comparing to his teammate. He's the first Mercedes on the road. Of course, purple in that middle sector, so snatches that away from Charles Leclerc, and this is looking like a really strong lap. They'll dive deep into the 129s here. While Antonelli, which is what they were running, a 129.3, which is what he set in free practice 3. And across the line, I expect it's going to be a good margin. Oh, actually, he lost a bit of time in that final sector. Of course, it was a personal best, but the jump that we saw in the other sectors compared to the Ferrari was not as strong. So only 0.5 of a second he is ahead of Charles Leclerc. Now it's George Russell, Harry, to cross the line.
And he's down by almost 0.6 of a second. Russell down in 5th. Kimi Antonelli lit up the timing screen in Sector 1 and Sector 2, fell away from it at the end. Now, in this new era of Formula 1, you start to question, well, actually, was there a battery deployment issue somewhere? Did they run out of battery? Did they take a curb too harshly? And that just decide within the power unit to not deploy the energy that they needed. That is what things can come down to, and that could blow things wide open, but plenty of time to get another lap on the board, but with just over 8 minutes remaining, it's Kimi Antonelli with a 1:30.035 in that prime position. Leclerc less than half a tenth of a second away in second. Piastri third. Hamilton with time to find in fourth. Then comes Russell. Norris has just popped himself up into fourth, much closer to his teammate than he was in FP3, making up for lost time after a power unit issue. Hadjar is seventh, ahead of Verstappen. Then comes Bortoleto and Gasly, the top 11, as Hulkenberg gets up to fifth in the Audi. Lindblad is 12th. Lawson, Ocon, Behrman and Colapinto are the top 16. Right now, those in that elimination zone are the two Williams drivers of Albon and Sainz, the two Cadillacs of Perez and Bottas, and the two Aston Martins.
Yeah, something doesn't feel quite right. I've got a load of oversteer.
Yeah, you can see surface temperatures out of balance.
Really odd. But then feels aerodynamical. No rear.
George Russell then, something feels odd, and for him it feels like an aero issue, but maybe something to do with tyre temperatures. But Russell's certainly not at ease in this first part of qualifying.
No, so it sounds like when they talk about the surface temperature, so that is pretty much what it is. The surface temperature on top of the tyre has just got too hot, so that means he's scrubbed them, he's had the snaps of oversteer will cause that surface temperature to shoot up, which is what he's trying to say. He's like, no, I think that's being caused because of mechanical grip, just not having the car underneath him is not responding the way he would have wanted to, which has shot that surface temperature off those tyres up as Bottas comes around to the final corner now. Lewis Hamilton's on another pretty decent lap. He's just gone fastest of anyone in that first sector, and we ride a ball with him now.
The sound of the seven-time world champion breaking into the hairpin. Charles Leclerc going quicker in that first sector, though, actually fastest of anybody in the other Ferrari. So the track ramping up in the second part of this Q1 session. Antonelli still the benchmark time, but of course this is all a battle just to get yourself through into Q2, secure that top 16 spot, and you'll find yourself living to fight another day. Lewis Hamilton up in 6th at the moment. First lap was about half a second away from his teammate. Better this time around. He's 3/10 down on Antonelli through the middle sector. Has a bit of traffic in the form of the Audi of Gabriel Bortoleto. The rear just sliding for Lewis Hamilton through the chicane. Holds it all together. Final corner to go, and across the line does improve and gets himself up into 3rd. Still about 2.5 tenths away from his teammate Charles Leclerc, who's going to go even quicker and goes to the top of the times, losing time in the final sector, but fastest of anybody through the first two, and puts a 10th of daylight between himself and Antonelli, and a 1:29.915 to go to the top of the times for Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, so we won't see the Mercedes try another lap, at least for now. I do expect them to come out of the pits, but the Ferraris, interestingly, have stayed out. Majority of the field did a push and then came into the box. Ferrari obviously feel that they still had life in the tyre to do so. Of course, there's a high tyre stress with this circuit, with the nature of the corners. The temperatures are fairly low. It's similar to what we saw really in China, with air temperature around 16, track 30. But because, Harry, they've got to harvest this energy, the actual stress on the tyre is less than what we've seen in previous years, because the cornering speed, for example, at like 130R are not as high, because they are having to, well, some bleed out the throttle, as I said, to regenerate that battery. And Max Verstappen is who we are riding on board with now, who is actually just behind his teammate. So Hadjar, the lead Red Bull at the moment.
Yeah, just a word on that energy change to the rules for this weekend. The teams agreed in a meeting with the governing body, the FIA and F1 last week, that the issue of driving on the limit in qualifying would be assessed in an attempt to find improvements before the next race in Miami in about 5 weeks' time. So in that context, the FIA's issued a change to the rules for this weekend's race in Japan, and so we've reduced the total amount of energy that cars can recover in one lap from 9 megajoules to 8 megajoules. So the reason for that is to essentially mean the drivers in cars have to do less recovery, particularly during a qualifying lap. So we can see them on the edge of adhesion that little bit more. It's not the finished product, it's not perfect, but it's a small step in the right direction, and more changes will be made, particularly in this break coming up and throughout of the season. But with just over 3 minutes remaining, those in trouble right now, the two Williams drivers of Albon and Sainz down in 17th and 18th, the two Cadillacs of Bottas and Perez, and the two Aston Martins, Stroll ahead of Alonso for now. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, just a quick update. Norris has had trouble all this weekend. He's now on his third battery. He's used one. That exploded. No good. He's used the second one. That was replaced yesterday. They'll do investigations as to whether it can be reused. So he's on his third and final battery. Any more, he'll have to take grid penalties. So that's not ideal going into this weekend.
More trouble brewing for the reigning world champion Lando Norris, who is just behind his teammate at the moment in 5th. It's Leclerc with the fastest lap time, a 1:29.9, a 10th clear of Antonelli. Then comes Hamilton in the Ferrari, the two McLarens. Nico Hülkenberg doing a great job for Audi up in 6th. Russell is 7th and out there again. Then come the two Red Bulls, who've really been struggling this weekend, and actually since the start of the year. I mean, Hadjar had a brilliant qualifying in Australia. Max Verstappen crashing out of that first qualifying session had it all to do in the race. China just appeared to be in that midfield pack, fighting with the Alpines and the Hasses, and that's where they find themselves yet again. But Max Verstappen is finding himself round the final corner now. He's 9th at the moment. He does improve and gets himself up into 6th on the soft tyre. What can his teammate Isaac Hadjar do? The man in that second seat for this year, he can't improve. He stays down in 9th, but still within a couple of tenths of his teammate Max Verstappen, as Russell puts in a much more respectable lap time for the Mercedes and puts himself into second, about half a tenth adrift of the Ferrari of Leclerc.
Yeah, so for Leclerc and Ferrari looking pretty decent, at least on that side of the garage. Lewis Hamilton struggling a little bit compared, but looking on the onboard of that Red Bull, the turn-in doesn't look great, and then when he's trying to get on the throttle from Verstappen, that doesn't look great. So it's just not connecting for a team that have won the most Grand Prix around Suzuka with 8 victories. It doesn't look like they're going to be adding to that this weekend, because they really are struggling. And Max has already been fairly vocal about the new regulations, and I can imagine that he's going to have some vocal words put across to his engineer, because the Red Bull does look a bit of a handful.
Russell, Piastri, Norris and the Red Bulls were all out there on used tyres. So Russell able to improve on that used tyre then. Small improvements coming from Alex Albon. Can he get himself up into Q2 in this last 30 seconds? Franco Colapinto is right on the edge. He should get one final flying lap as he comes across now. So a big lap needed for the Argentine in the Alpine, who scored his first point for Alpine last time out in China. Ollie Behrman's at risk as well. He's down there in 15th. The two Racing Bulls too. Carlos Sainz crosses the line, gets himself up into 13th position. He took 2 points in China last time out to register Williams' first points of the year. Lindblad now improves up into 12th. Ocon 13th. That pushes Sainz already down to 14th. Colapinto's in trouble here. What can Albon do? He crosses the line. The checkered flag is out. The Thai driver gets through into Q2, but only 16th. Could still easily be knocked out here. Lawson should be safely through. Nice lap for the Kiwi, who was demoted a year ago to that team in Racing Bulls, up to 9th and ahead of Hadjar to get himself through into Q2. Fernando Alonso is the sound you can hear now, and improves but will not make it through. He continues his streak of out-qualifying his teammate Lance Stroll and makes it 39 consecutive races out-qualifying the Canadian, and it looks like the Aston Martins will occupy the back row of the grid. The two Cadillacs both ahead of them. Perez ahead of Bottas, both still out there. Bottas is on a better lap. Colapinto's on a decent lap. And what about Ollie Behrman? I don't think Behrman's going to get through here. His lap time is not proving competitive. Bearman could be knocked out here. The British driver in his second season, who currently sits 5th in the Drivers' Championship, is down in 18th at the moment and not setting the timing screens alight. Albon gets knocked out by Colapinto, who just squeezes through up into 16th. Piastri gets himself up into 4th, but he wasn't in trouble here, and I think that will be that for Q1. Alex Albon pipped by Colapinto right at the flag, but the big shock is Ollie Bearman out in the Haas in 18th place, Alice.
Yeah, that's surprising for Ollie Bearman. He's not looked strong all weekend, but he's looked strong enough to go through into the next stage of qualifying. Of course, he had that spin, didn't he? So he didn't get a proper running on the soft tyre because he totally flat spotted his new set that he got in free practice 3. So I wonder if that's had an effect, or maybe he's got a little bit of traffic. It has come up about some impeding between Hadjar and Sainz. So obviously that's not involving Ollie Bearman, but something happened in that middle sector. Okay, it wasn't a strong first sector, but his middle sector was poor.
Yeah, and something must have happened for him to not continue in the last 2 sectors. Bearman comes into the pits and is out of that one, down in 18th, ahead of the 2 Cadillacs. Perez out-qualifies Bottas on this occasion. Sergio Perez, who has not out-qualified a teammate at Suzuka since 2017. Well, he puts that right today. And it's P19 for the Mexican, ahead of Bottas. Fernando Alonso ahead of Lance Stroll in Honda's home race. Aston Martin Honda 21st and 22nd. The incident involving Carlos Sainz and Isaac Hadjar impeding has been reviewed already. No further investigation on that front, so they can both continue throughout this qualifying session. But that is Q1 done. We've lost the slowest 6 cars. Alex Albon just missing out. Unfortunate for him in the Williams as they continue to struggle, but his teammate Carlos Sainz did make it through.
He did. So, and Colapinto, he's been having a bit of a struggle for this. So for him, actually, to get through into the next part of qualifying is good. Here's to Albon.
Where was I slower to Carlos?
You probably don't want to know, but you can probably guess.
Yes. I complain. Some 3 races in a row that there's something wrong, but I'm sure it's my driving still.
Alex Albon not happy. Round 3 of the championship coming to you from Suzuka. It's the 2 Mercedes who look strongest so far, but at the end of the first qualifying session, Q1, Charles Leclerc was actually quickest, ahead of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. We're about to head into Q2. It looks like it's going to be a tight battle in that mid-pack, but Alice Powell, certainly a strong drive so far for the 2 Mercedes cars.
Yes, but saying that, of course, it was Leclerc that was fastest in this first part of qualifying. Russell, Antonelli set their time on a used set of tyres. There's potential there when they bolt on a new set, but Ollie Bearman is the disappointment because he was looking fairly strong to progress into the next part of qualifying, but wasn't able to make it through. Yeah,
big loss for Ollie Bearman, down in 18th, but we continue through into Q2 as we slowly set the grid for the Japanese Grand Prix. Grandstand still packed out here in Suzuka. Just to reconfirm then who we've lost so far. Alex Albon down in P17. What did you make of that team radio message we just heard there? I've been complaining for 3 races on the trot now. He didn't want to know, or that's what his engineer said, you don't want to know where you're slower, to Carlos Sainz. So it's my driving style, that's the problem.
So it sounds like somewhere along the line in the debriefs for the past couple of races, he feels that he's lacking somewhere, whether it be in a corner or leading onto a straight, potentially his exit. He feels that there's a problem, and it sounds like his engineer, the team, the data engineers are probably saying, it's your driving style. And of course that can affect how the car behaves, how the car handles. I've seen it with many drivers in the past that I've certainly worked with in the junior categories. And it feels like Alex is maybe at war a little bit, and maybe war's a bit too strong of a word in his team, with how the car is handling. I feel like they might be blaming him and he's blaming them.
all not happy down at Williams, who have lost at least one car in Q1 in the first 3 Grand Prix this season. Ollie Bearman down in 18th, then reached Q3 at Suzuka last year. Won't be able to do that this time. Perez out-qualifies his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who starts P20. That's his lowest ever qualifying position in Japan. Aston Martin, the slowest team, actually for the first time this season, and they are quite a way behind even the Cadillacs. A few tenths adrift of Valtteri Bottas was Fernando Alonso. So not great for them. And Lance Stroll, the slowest qualifier at Suzuka for the 2nd consecutive season, as Charles Leclerc decides now is the time to have a bit of a power nap.
No, he's not having it. You can see, well, we can see that he eyes shut, and he was doing gear changes and steering wheel moves. He's basically visualising a lap. We've seen Sebastian Vettel do that quite often, and it was interesting to get that view of Charles Leclerc there, taking himself through a lap, trying to get the feeling through his body, trying to mimic the movements, and just imagine what it's like, because of course sometimes it will only come down to that one lap. And
do you do that at Q2?
A lot of drivers often do a lap before going out in qualifying. Obviously this is the only, going up the feeder series ladder, Formula 1 is the only one that has these 3 segments of qualifying. But a lot of drivers, more drivers do it than you think.
Well, Charles Leclerc then deciding that he wants to do that, and is now out there on track with his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc, who has qualified 4th for both Grand Prix so far this year. Can he go 1, 2, 3 better this afternoon? We'll find out, but this is Q2, where we look to eliminate the next slowest 6 drivers, so everyone down from 11th through to 16th. It's a fight to get yourself up inside the top 10, and for that fight for pole position. Who do you think is going to be in trouble here? This is where we're going to see that really tight fight in the midfield come to fruition.
I think Colapinto, looking at his pace the last few sessions, he's certainly going to be at risk. Sainz, the Williams just doesn't have the pace, and then looking through the rest of it, Lindblad and Lawson have been there or thereabouts, knocking on the door of the top 10, but I just don't think they have the pace. Gasly has been fairly strong in you could say the second Alpine, the first Alpine. I think he might just sneak through into the top 10. Hadjar obviously needs to try and make that move to get into the top 10, was just slightly knocked out in the last couple of practice sessions, but he was 9th in that previous one. So, sorry, no, he wasn't actually, he was 12th. So he needs to find a little bit of time as well.
Making his way through the second Degner is Kimi Antonelli. One man not in this qualifying is Ollie Bearman. He's speaking with Jenny Gao.
He is. Ollie, I'm sorry for that, coming out in Q1, 18th. Can you just describe what happened for us?
Yeah, we had a small issue in Q1, in the first run, and didn't have full power, let's say. We had a small problem, and then in the second run just didn't really gain any more lap time, so we need to understand exactly what happened. It's a shame to be standing here right now, but I'm optimistic about the race tomorrow.
Coming into qualifying, a lot of people were saying, it's going to be pretty hard to drive it, not as enjoyable. What did you think out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit less, I would say, rewarding to do a good lap in this generation of car in a circuit like this, but I mean, it's by no means easy. There's still a big challenge. It's just a very different one to what we've been used to.
Okay, thanks, Ollie.
Ollie Bearman then, who was knocked out down in 18th position, so still needs to investigate really what went wrong, but struggling with maybe some power deployment issues in that first run, and didn't quite have the time to improve for that second run. But optimistic then for Sunday's Grand Prix. He'll have 53 laps to work his way up the order and try and continue his point scoring run so far in 2026.
Yeah, and while he was chatting to Jenny, we saw a shot of George Russell having pretty much a four-wheel drift as he came through the exit of the final chicane, and that's meant that he's 3.5 tenths behind his teammate after these first run of laps. Hadjar jumps up into fifth, 5.5 tenths off, and actually ahead of Max Verstappen. But yeah, here we go. Russell on the radio saying, I'm still struggling with the rear end, and that's what it looked like on the exit of the chicane.
Yeah, with just over 10.5 minutes left to run. It's not been the smoothest of qualifying so far for George Russell, who hasn't been quite able to do it on the first flying lap in each session. Antonelli currently tops the times with a 1:29.774, 11 thousandths of a second clear of Charles Leclerc, who continues to look strong in that Ferrari. Can Leclerc cause the Mercedes a bit of a headache this afternoon? Russell third, Hamilton fourth, Hadjar ahead of Verstappen in fifth and sixth, but the two Red Bulls pretty evenly matched. Hulkenberg has just crossed the line in the Audi, continuing to look good in seventh. Then Lindblad is eighth, the last timed runner at the moment. Still waiting for lap times to come through from the two McLarens of Piastri and Norris. Gabriel Bortoleto in the second Audi is going to be the next car to cross the line. Puts it up to third, 3 tenths away from Antonelli.
Yeah,
good lap.
Yeah, looking very good. Piastri now fastest of anybody in the first sector. Try to sneak a little bit of a toe from one of the Red Bulls as he goes through Spoon, using all the curb available on the exit, and then down into 130R, which is certainly a bit more of a challenge in previous years, but 2.5 tenths up now is Oscar Piastri. He is on a brand new set of soft tyres, whereas Antonelli was on a used set. So you would expect Piastri to sail to the top of the times. Yeah, just over 3 tenths of a second. But it still looks, I can imagine, if Antonelli was to bolt on a new set of soft tyre, that's going to give him more than a 3-tenth advantage.
Yeah, Bortoleto also on those new softs too. Norris jumps up to 4th spot. 3 and a bit tenths adrift, though, of his teammate Piastri.
Yeah, he's been lacking. Okay, he's missed track time over the course of the weekend, but he's been lacking behind his teammate, hasn't he? Even the past few, past couple of race weekends, and certainly evident this weekend. Okay, maybe he'll change his tune for the remainder of the session. But I have to say, that lap from Bortoleto, yes, okay, it's on a brand new set of soft tyre, but that's impressive. His teammate's down in 11th at the moment. And is this going to be the four-wheel drift there? You could see hear the revs peak up, and that's the drift that I think I was talking about earlier, where Russell doesn't look as comfortable as he did in the earlier part of today.
It's only it looks like only a small snap, but it's enough to cost him a decent chunk of lap time. 7 minutes and 50 seconds to go. Piastri now the fastest of the runners, a 1:29.451, 3 tenths clear of Antonelli. Then it's Leclerc, Norris and Bortoleto, the top 5. Russell's in 6th on an outlap at the moment. Hamilton's in the garage down in 7th. Then it's Gasly ahead of the two Red Bulls of Hadjar and Verstappen. Right now in that elimination zone, it's Hulkenberg in the Audi, Ocon in the sole remaining Haas, Lindblad in the Racing Bulls, Colapinto's Alpine, Liam Lawson and Carlos Sainz, who is a few tenths adrift, down in 16th in the one remaining Williams. Bit of time then for those to come back into the pits and reset for the final runs in this second part of qualifying ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix. 53 laps of running around this iconic Suzuka circuit, and you can hear it all on 5 Live on Sunday. We'll be building up from 5:30 in the morning ahead of lights out at 6 o'clock, and should be the last proper early start for a little while, and we'll have a 5-week gap until we head to Miami after the cancellations of the Bahrain and the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. The calendar then reduces by 2 races.
So Lewis Hamilton's just gone out on a brand new set of soft tyres. This is George Russell. Sounded like not much of a build-up to this first push, unless he's building the tyres back, and he's going to grab a little bit of traffic. That is going to be Lewis Hamilton on the exit of pit lane. Just moves out of the way in time and up through the iconic section of track here in Suzuka, through turn 5, turn 6, feeding out the throttle. And that will actually, that part throttle will help regenerate battery power as well. And he is 0.03 of a second away from Oscar Piastri.
Overtake mode freely available for drivers in qualifying. Gets an extra half a megajoule to use, activated under the same parameters as the old DRS system when you're within the designated zones. And that is down the start finish straight. You're able to deploy that. It can be used at the same time as boost mode during the races, and that boost button giving maximum power from the engine and the battery to a driver. Great new tactical tool, particularly in races. But for George Russell then, into the final chicane, clouts the curve on the inside for the right-hander at 16, then the left-hander for 17 before it curves back round. Down the start finish straight we go, and it's enough for second, but it's 0.3 away from Oscar Piastri's fastest time at the moment. Final lap for Lewis Hamilton coming in as he crosses the line with just over 4.5 minutes to go. The sound of the 7-time champ slowing it down as he plunges downhill through the double right-handers of turn 1 and 2 and embarks on the S's that make up sector 1.
Now, if my timing screen is correct, it looks like Russell's lap time was on a brand new set of soft tyres, and that's quite I had to double check because I was like, surely that can't be a new set, but it is. So that just shows that his woes and how he's not feeling comfortable at all in the car, because Antonelli, he's just a 100th ahead of Antonelli pretty much, who was on a used set of tyres. Charles Leclerc now, wow, fastest of anybody in the first sector. He also has a brand new set of soft tyres on, and he's the first driver to jump into the 1:30 seconds in that sector. So he's looking pretty strong, and he's faster than his teammate. Actually, Lewis Hamilton, even with that new set, has not set a personal best in the first sector.
No, but Charles Leclerc absolutely flying through that first sector. The 28-year-old Monegasque now makes his way down towards 130R as Hamilton comes through the middle sector. Hamilton making his way through 130R, Leclerc coming through the middle sector. Hamilton will cross the line first. Personal best for Hamilton in the middle sector. Round the final corner. Finds time, but only enough to put him up a position into 6th. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc next across the line. What's it going to be to the top of the times?
Well, I think we're missing something here. We could lose this much pace. Have a look for everything.
It's George Russell, who is sounding very bemused about where his lack of pace has gone. He's 4.5 tenths away from Charles Leclerc's fastest lap time as we get into the final couple of minutes. Max Verstappen just having to correct his Red Bull on the exit of turn 2 as he now makes his way up through the S's. Left, right, then left again before he curves right and then up towards Dunlop Curve, up over the crest, through the left-hander, deploys his battery before he'll recharge it coming in to the first of the Degners. Takes a bit of curb on the exit, slows it down for the right-hander. He'll have Hamilton ahead of him, gets nicely out of the way, does the Ferrari driver. Now for Max Verstappen into the braking zone of the hairpin, swings it into turn 11. A little bit slow on the pickup for throttle. Right on the edge of being eliminated is Max Verstappen. He's got Hulkenberg, Ocon, Lindblad, Colapinto, Lawson and Sainz all out there about to start their final flying laps. So Verstappen now making his way towards 130R, personal best, but he's still 9 tenths away from Charles Leclerc in the middle sector. Pierre Gasly's having a decent run through the first sector. We'll see if he can maintain it coming through the middle. Hadjar looking to improve. Hadjar actually quicker than his teammate through the middle sector as Verstappen crosses the line. And and improves slightly, finds a 10th or so and puts himself up into 9th. Hadjar finding much more time than his teammate, and the Frenchman puts that Red Bull up into 8th spot as Lando Norris rather clumsily finds his way through the chicane. Wouldn't have found any time through there. Really clouted the curbs a bit too much and doesn't improve his lap time. Stays in 5th with less than a minute on the clock to go. Piastri doesn't improve either. Gasly's done well in the first sector, lost time in the middle sector. Can Hulkenberg find a way through and join his teammate up inside Q3? Could we get 2 Audis inside the top 10? Gasly puts himself up into a remarkable 6th. Max Verstappen's in real trouble here, and I don't think he's going to get another go at it, is the Dutchman. What can Hulkenberg do? Hulkenberg will miss out on Q3. His teammate improving in the middle sector. Colapinto misses out, down in 13th. Gasly, a remarkable 6th right now. What's Bortoleto got? Fastest of anybody in the final sector. Stays 8th. Can anyone knock Max Verstappen out here? Arvid Lindblad's going to be next across the line, and it is Lindblad in the Racing Bulls, the Red Bull Junior team, and it's Max Verstappen out in Q2. Lindblad squeezes through. Can anyone else find time? Lawson still coming through the final sector now. Carlos Sainz takes the checkered flag. He won't improve, neither will Lawson, who can't get through. Lawson does improve, but only to 14th. And that looks like Max Verstappen knocked out. Kimi Antonelli is going to take the flag either way, and just for good measure sets the tone and finds 2.5 tenths to go fastest. A 1:29.048 from Antonelli, but with the checkered flag out, it confirms as he heads down the pit lane, Max Verstappen out of Q2.
I think it's something that the car made is completely unworkable. Suddenly it's qualifying, jumping on high speed on the rear suddenly.
Max Verstappen this saying something's not right, jumping through the high-speed corners as he gets wheeled back into the garage. Verstappen then, previously unbeaten at Suzuka in qualifying since 2019, out of Q2 and 11th as his teammate Hadjar makes it through into Q3.
Wow. I mean, Russell and Verstappen seem to be getting the same feeling, don't they? Like how much the car has changed going into qualifying. But Arvid Lindblad, wow, take a bow, because he is 4 tenths quicker than his teammate, nearly 5 tenths quicker. And he's done a great job sailing in through, but that was very tame. I was expecting more frustration from Max Verstappen, but yeah, not ideal for Max, who clearly feels that there is something wrong with. And we said when we were watching that onboard, didn't we, from earlier on in the session, it just didn't look nice. It wasn't turning in, and then it had no grip on the rear and on throttle, squirming around everywhere. And I tell you what, I think Nico Hulkenberg will be slightly disappointed, because he was, in the last couple of practice sessions, been there or thereabouts within the top 8. So for him to just miss out, I think he'll be pretty disappointed as well.
He's just got out of the car, is Nico Hulkenberg, and he's looking at the timing screen, and he'll see that Gabriel Bortoleto, his teammate, finished that session up in 8th. So one Audi gets through into Q3, but out then at Q2, Max Verstappen in 11th, Esteban Ocon in 12th, Nico Hulkenberg 13th, Liam Lawson 14th, Branko Colapinto 15th, and Carlos Sainz 16th, and last of the runners in that session, as Max Verstappen walks down the pit lane, helmet off. Doesn't look too frustrated, but I'm sure big questions in the debrief tonight. And are we about to see a mistake or an issue crop up for Max Verstappen? We're just having a look at a replay from his first lap, and it was the correction coming out of turn 1 into 2, where the Red Bull just seems to step out, takes maybe a bit too much curve than he would have liked, heading up through the S's, through Dunlop curve. Looks fairly neat and tidy there.
It was just the delay to throttle. So he's asking for throttle on the exit of 2. Rear kicks out, says no. Then going up through 5, 6. That front end mid-corner, he just has to wait to pick up the throttle. So the car can't make its mind up what it's doing. It's squirming on the rear when he asks for throttle, and then on on that entry and mid-corner turn-in, he just doesn't have the front end. So looked fairly neat and tidy because the rear wasn't squirming everywhere, but it's not how he'd want it to be.
Well, Max Verstappen's loss is Arvid Lindblad's gain. What an impressive qualifying it's been so far. Arvid Lindblad, who has never been to this track before, has made it through into Q3.
He has. I mean, we said the same thing about when he went to China, and he actually missed a majority of the free practice session on that sprint weekend and still delivered a great performance. And he's just thriving at the moment down at the Racing Bulls, compared to certainly to his teammate. And Liam Lawson will be looking at that timing screen going, where am I missing here? He's struggling compared to Lindblad, who's calm, cool. He's got his drink in the cockpit at the moment, puts it on the side of the car, and nothing seems to really be troubling him at the moment.
Well, a few moments we'll get Q3 underway, which will have Arvid Lindblad in the Racing Bulls, the one Red Bull of Isaac Hadjar, the one Audi of Gabriel Bortoleto, the one Alpine of Pierre Gasly, and then it's the two McLarens, Piastri and Norris, the two Ferraris, Leclerc and Hamilton, and the two Mercedes, Antonelli of Russell, which Russell is also struggling out there. Here's Lindblad's radio.
Come on, mate, that's got to be a good one. Okay, mate, that's done. Excuse me. We're done. John!
Arvid Lindblad happy with that one. Can see what that means to him. Through and up into Q3. Well done to the British rookie. Just 18 years of age, the youngest ever British driver. Let's see what he can do in the next few minutes or so, as the fight for the top 10 will get underway, and that fight for pole position, Kimi Antonelli looking quick. Well, the big shock in Q1 was the loss of Ollie Behrman's Haas. The big shock in Q2 is Max Verstappen's Red Bull knocked out in 11th place. He will not proceed through into the top 10 shootout. His teammate Isaac Hadjar will. So will the Red Bull junior driver Arvid Lindblad, who was the man who knocked Verstappen out. And Verstappen at a loss to explain where that pace has gone. So Max Verstappen continues to be an unhappy camp. But Kimi Antonelli and the Mercedes laying down the marker at the end of that session and looks primed to take that pole position, but he'll have a fight on his hands yet. All quiet down at Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton sitting waiting patiently. I have to say, I think is it going a bit under the radar? Quietly impressive from Isaac Hadjar, who's been there or thereabouts with Max Verstappen and is the only Red Bull left in qualifying.
No, actually, when you were doing that summary there, I was thinking, we've not really chatted about Hadjar. That's always a seat that you want but you don't want, isn't it? But that second Red Bull seat, it's a privilege to have it, but it's hard work to keep it. And Hadjar, he's out-qualified Max Verstappen. He's been knocked out, Max, obviously, in Q2. And I think he's doing a really solid job. We knew that he's got talent and he's competitive. And many have said, yeah, well, jumping into a seat as tough as that second one at Red Bull is perfect timing for him when it comes to new regulations, because it's all a clean slate, and it does seem to be that way for Hadjar at the moment. So no, really good job by him, and Red Bull will be really pleased to have him sailing up through into this part of qualifying, and same with Lindblad as well.
I think also a word for Pierre Gasly, up in 7th at the end of Q2 and heads out on track now, as we've just got a rather slow-moving Lando Norris.
I think he's getting a bit of a gap, isn't he? So he's checking his mirrors to make sure he's got enough space behind him, which, there we go, into gear, off he goes. So he's just kind of cruising, and which has then allowed Oscar to now come out of the garage, who's going to do pretty much a similar thing, crawl down the pit lane, and he's closely followed by Lewis Hamilton, and then the next Ferrari behind that of Charles Leclerc.
11.5 minutes then on the clock, and the fight for pole position is on. We've got the top 4 teams, and then we've got some great midfield scraps for that best of the rest position. The likes of that Alpine of Gasly, the Audi of Bortoleto, the Racing Bulls of Lindblad, and, well, I think you have to say the Red Bull of Hadjar actually in that mix for best of the rest now, and not quite up there with the top guns, which include the two Ferraris of Hamilton and Leclerc, the two McLarens of Piastri and Norris, and the two Mercedes of Antonelli and Russell, who have the edge. And is it Kimi Antonelli who has more of an edge than his teammate George Russell, who doesn't feel quite right in that Mercedes during this qualifying session? And we're about to get the first like-for-like comparison on the first runs, both out there on the soft tyre and embarking on their first laps now. Antonelli ahead on track and making his way up through Dunlop Curve now. Sweeps round Dunlop Curve, the left-hander. The sun peeking through the clouds, which have garnered slightly as the session has gone on. Temperatures dropping as well. Track temperature down to 28 degrees. Air temperature 16.6 degrees. Through the first sector split then, George Russell quicker than Kimi Antonelli, with the remainder out there on outlets now. Kimi Antonelli through Spoon Curve, the double left-hander. Touches the curb on the outside. Active aero, that straight line mode activating. Gets a little bit of a toe as well. And a last minute dart out from the back of Isaac Hadjar's Red Bull. Any extra gain he can get, he will. And Antonelli bites back through the middle sector. George Russell can't quite match him. It's going to be close. Let's see what they've got over the line. Just the first runs in Q3. Antonelli, a 1:28.778. Russell to the line, a 1:29.076. It's advantage Antonelli.
Yeah, and that was gasp from me, that is quick into the 1:28s. The first driver to do so all weekend. Bortoleto on his used set of soft tyres. He goes P3, 1:30.6, so he'll be looking for a little bit more pace, assuming that he's going to bolt on a new set for this second lot of runs. Lewis Hamilton snatches the fastest first sector of anybody now. He's the first of the Ferraris to cross that time and being pretty much neck and neck with Charles Leclerc. Lewis has been struggling a little bit compared to his teammate Charles Leclerc, so we'll see how they get on further on down the lap. But next up is going to be Lando Norris across 1:29.4, so 0.6 of a second away. He is on a brand new set of soft tyres, as is Oscar Piastri, who's a little bit closer, 0.3 quicker than his teammate, slotting into P3, but still 3.5 adrift of Antonelli.
Yeah, better lap from Piastri. Hamilton to the line in 5th, fastest of anybody through the first sector. What Charles Leclerc got, he has looked like the one to cause a headache for Mercedes in these first two parts of qualifying, but 6.5 away on that first lap. 5th and 6th for Leclerc and Hamilton. Gasly behind in 7th. Bortoleto 8th. Hadjar's about to come across the line for his first lap and puts it into 7th. 1.2 seconds adrift. Just Arvid Lindblad then, who is out there, but is on an outlap at the moment. And so we'll see what he's got. Running slightly out of sequence then is the British rookie.
Leclerc's slower than what he did in Q2 by 1.5, so either maybe a bit of a mistake, not the feeling that he's feeling in this session, so that'll be disappointing from Leclerc. Not that it would have made him jump too much further up the order, at least at this moment in time. He would have actually pipped Lando Norris, but Antonelli getting wheeled back into the garage, and that's a mighty lap from Antonelli. George Russell really needs to try and dig deep now to pull something out the bag to challenge Antonelli.
Kimi Antonelli looking for his second career pole position. Second consecutive pole position it could be as well for the 19-year-old Italian, who became officially the youngest pole sitter last time out in China. Third youngest podium sitter. Are we on the crest of a wave with seeing what Toto Wolff saw in Kimi Antonelli a couple of years ago, only in his second season of Formula One? And I think from the off, everyone almost not writing him off, but very much backing the other horse in George Russell with the experience. Still early stages in this season, but 3/10 the gap after the first runs in Q3. A 1:28.7 for Antonelli. Russell in second, then Piastri third. Norris 3/10 away from his own teammate in fourth. The two Ferraris, Leclerc with the edge over Hamilton. Hadjar then in seventh, bringing up the best of the rest, with Gasly tucked in behind ahead of the Audi of Bortoleto. Lindblad didn't set a lap time, so I wonder if he made a mistake and bailed out, because he was out there and then came back into the pits. So Lindblad then leaving himself with what will most likely be one flying attempt.
So the gaps between Antonelli and Russell, where was the time loss for Russell? Well, that's 2/10 in the middle sector and then 1/10 in the final sector. And the final sector is pretty much 130R and the chicane. Middle sector is from the first part of Degners all the way down to that back straight out of Spoon. So that trickier section is where George is losing most of the time to his teammate, as he'll get to have a little look over some data, say, okay, where am I losing? Tell me, what can he do in his driving? I did notice that the track temperature is cooler compared to what it was in free practice 3. It's 3 degrees cooler, so I wonder if that's having a little bit of effect on some of the drivers' comments and feedback.
Q3 then underway with just over 4.5 minutes. Kimi Antonelli currently with the fastest lap time. George Russell in second, just sat in the cockpit of his Mercedes having a look at the data on the screen pulled down in front of him. The one flying attempt it will be. Mercedes versus Mercedes. They look like they have the advantage over the rest of the field. Or could anyone cause a headache? Piastri the next best in the McLaren, with Norris in fourth. Last few moments then of Q3 here in Suzuka at the iconic Japanese circuit, where Formula One rocks up for round 3 of the Formula One World Championship. Right now it is Kimi Antonelli who is sitting pretty on provisional pole, 3/10 ahead of his teammate George Russell. The two McLarens, Oscar Piastri in third, Lando Norris fourth. Then it's the two Ferraris of Leclerc and Hamilton. Isaac Hadjar, the sole remaining Red Bull with his teammate Max Verstappen knocked out in Q2, is in seventh, with Gasly's Alpine eighth, Audi's Bortoleto in ninth, and the Racing Bulls of Arvid Lindblad, the British rookie, in 10th, without a time on the board, as they now slowly filter out of the pit lane for what will be one flying lap, Alice. It's going to be a one-lap shootout, and it looks like it's the two Mercedes in prime position, and Antonelli certainly has the advantage for now.
Antonelli is absolutely dialed in during this qualifying session, so everyone's ventured out on a brand new set of soft tyres, so that will give them the maximum grip available. All about bringing in these tyres nicely, bring them in gently as Russell weaves left to right, just to try and generate some of that tyre temperature. Track temperature slightly cooler than what we saw, and it keeps dropping quite significantly with the cloud cover coming over here in Japan. So crunch time, we saw of course Charles Leclerc, didn't we, do some visualization laps. He eyes are open, eyes closed, left to right, doing the gear shifts, pretend gear shifts on his steering wheel before venturing out, and now it's really time to put it to the test.
Some big stories then developing here at this Suzuka track. Could Kimi Antonelli, who became the youngest ever pole sitter last time out in China, en route to taking victory at the Chinese Grand Prix, follow that up with a consecutive pole position? Or could George Russell find something in this final lap? What about the McLarens? Oscar Piastri hasn't actually started a Grand Prix this year. He'll be hoping to do that tomorrow, but can he first set sights on out-qualifying teammate and reigning world champion Lando Norris, who is down in fourth place? Norris, who has been plagued with reliability issues all throughout the weekend. The two Ferraris seem to have dropped away so far in this session. Charles Leclerc looked at one point to be the headache for Mercedes. And then comes that best of the rest battle, which is headed up by the Red Bull of Isaac Hadjar, Gasly's Alpine, Bortoletto's Audi, and the Racing Bulls of Lindblad all scrapping out for that one. Antonelli, though, and Russell on their flying laps. Antonelli, little bit of a lock-up, coming through the hairpin as he now heads through Spoon Curve, a double left-hander through turns 13 and 14. Takes a bit of exit curve. Now heads down that backstretch towards 130R. Straight line mode activated with the rear and the front wings both opening before shutting as he turns it into the left-hander. Down through the gears, into the braking zone with 40 seconds left on the clock. Clouts the curb on the inside, clouts the curb on the outside. One final arc round the final corner and across the line for Antonelli. It's fastest of anybody in the final sector, but he doesn't actually improve his lap time. Stays on pole. Can Russell improve? No, he can't. Russell loses time. Antonelli sits on provisional pole. Can anyone cause him a headache? It's looking unlikely. Lando Norris will be next across the line. Improves in that final sector, but not his position. Piastri looks like he'll hold on to third place. It's the two Mercedes ahead of the two McLarens. But what about the Ferraris? I mentioned Charles Leclerc was the man who could cause a headache. He dropped away in Q2, but he's fastest of anybody in the first sector. Hamilton will cross the line first, not improving. He stays down in sixth and is first to take the checkered flag. But what about Charles Leclerc, Alice? He's flying.
He is, and certainly through this last section, Spoon, we wait till he gets a whack of oversteer. That might be pole gone. If he was heading for pole position, he's going to lose a handful of time onto this back straight. We wait, and yet 0.3 of a second he has lost to Antonelli. That was looking so good for the Ferrari driver, Harry, but I don't think it's going to happen now.
The back end just stepping out for Charles Leclerc when it mattered most. Rally style round the final corner for the Monegasque to the line. He does improve, but he can't pip Antonelli. It's fourth for Charles Leclerc, but it's pole position for Kimi Antonelli. The 19-year-old Italian does it back-to-back poles. Fantastic work for Mercedes with George Russell in second. Then it's Piastri third, Charles Leclerc fourth. Lando Norris rounds out the top five with Hamilton in sixth, and winning out that best of the rest battle, Pierre Gasly's Alpine seventh ahead of Hadjar. Bortoletto ninth with Arvid Lindblad rounding out the top 10. But Alice, it could have been something there at the end for Charles Leclerc, but mighty from the start from Kimi Antonelli. Let's hear from him first.
Pole position, mate.
Let's go, man. Wow. It's a shame the last lap because it was a good one, but yeah, good. I'm happy. It was a good quali. Happy.
Yeah,
it was a good quali.
Yeah, good clean session.
You should be happy. You're on pole position, and actually, just to point out, Charles Leclerc was a 10.5 up in that first sector on Antonelli. We'll never know if he was going to be faster in that second sector due to that huge snap of oversteer he had on the exit of Spoon.
Well, Kimi Antonelli gets out of his Mercedes car and waves to the fans. He's done the job on Saturday and taken pole position. Can he convert it to the win on Sunday? As he now puts the headrest back inside his Mercedes. Fantastic job from Antonelli. Mercedes front row lockout, their first front row lockout at Suzuka since 2018, with George Russell in second. And I think Russell will be asking a few questions after that qualifying about where the pace went.
He's been saying it from the very start, wasn't he, of this qualifying session, that he was just feeling that he just didn't have the car underneath him. And to be fair to him, it didn't look like he did. As Oscar Piastri slowly climbs out of his McLaren, I think Oscar will be pretty pleased with that. He's half a tenth behind Russell. He'll feel that hopefully he can get a good launch and jump in front of the Mercedes tomorrow. But I think it's going to be Charles Leclerc that's going to be thinking, if only he was maybe a little bit too greedy on the throttle on the exit of turn 14. It was a good job to save it, because he nearly did what Ollie Behrman did and have a spin round there. But good job. We're actually going to catch a replay of Charles Leclerc now. So goes in uses all the curb available, just starts to clip on the throttle, and then that's where that rear kicks out, and that would have been easily 2 tenths, because you're then going to not be able to carry that speed down the long straight through 130R. Maybe we'll see if Mr. Russell made a mistake as well. Huge clout of the curb through the last part of the chicane. So a neat and tidy lap is pretty much as what's got Antonelli pole. Not overdriving, not pushing it too much. Of course, it is going to be neat and tidy. That's most of the time that's going to get you pole. We have seen some scrappy ones in the past, particularly that one that was on the knife edge last year from Max Verstappen. But he's done the job. That's Antonelli.
He certainly has. Obviously, Charles Leclerc didn't visualise that kick of the rear end.
No, he didn't.
Spoon. No. Didn't quite see that one. Right, let's hear from our top 3 after qualifying. Kimi Antonelli on pole. They're down in Parc Fermé, and they're speaking with Jean Alesi.
Kimi, what a pole position. Tell us from the inside.
Yeah, I'm super happy with the session. It was a good one. Was a clean one, and I felt very good in the car. And every run I was just improving, and was a shame for the last lap because I locked up in turn 11, but was a good one as well. So, really happy with the session, and I will focus on to tomorrow.
We enjoy a lot from outside.
Thank you so much.
George, you have a hard time now in the team.
Yeah, you did a great job again. Really strange session for us. I mean, we were both very fast all weekend. We made some adjustments in after FP3, and then at the beginning of qualifying we were nowhere. So need to kind of understand. Very lucky again to be in P2. The last 2 weekends it's kind of both gone wrong come qualifying, but races tomorrow and still a lot to play for.
Oscar, finally a good start of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think qualifying's been okay this year, but nice to get into the top 3. I think this weekend we've looked good, and I think we've executed well. We clearly don't have the pace or the grip to match Mercedes still, but we're getting closer, which is the most important thing.
Well done. Kimi, you will wake up the whole Italy tomorrow morning. Everybody will watch you, but we are in Japan and you see the fan. Say something to them.
Yeah, I mean, the fans here in Japan are pretty incredible. There's so much passion, and racing in such an historic track is an incredible feeling. The track is unbelievable to drive with this kind of cars, and plus the fans give us a little bit more of a boost going on when we go on track. So thank you so much for coming, and arigato.
Jean Alesi speaking with Kimi Antonelli, George Russell and Oscar Piastri, your top 3. And Alice, the pole sitter has won 7 of the last 8 Grand Prix at Suzuka. He's done the business on the Saturday. Can he do it on the Sunday?
It's a hard track to follow, but with these new regulations we've seen plenty of overtaking moves. George said about having that setup change, clearly not happy, but he's going to be gunning. He knows that no one likes their teammate beating them, particularly the younger one. Everyone's now talking about Antonelli. They've not forgotten about George Russell, but it's all the Antonelli show at the moment. So I expect George, if there's a gap there going into turn 1, I would be very surprised if he doesn't put his car all the way down that inside.
As Kimi Antonelli signs the Pirelli Pole Position Award, being handed to him by a famous Japanese sumo wrestler. Jenny, your thoughts on that qualifying session?
What do you think by the end of lap 1? Leclerc leading? His starts have been lightning rocket starts. Yeah. Bortoleto right up there. They've been good starts as well. It's going to be funky fun.
I think so. I think a word for Pierre Gasly as well, up in 7th. But look, we're going to be analysing what we've just seen in qualifying on the Checkered Flag podcast, which will be available a little later on the Checkered Flag feed. Just search F1 on BBC Sounds for that. Or if you want to hear it on the radio, it will be on 5 Live. Tonight at 8:30, when it comes to the race day then on Sunday, 53 laps of running, and we'll be on air on 5 Live from 5:30 in the morning, ahead of Lights Out from 6 o'clock for the 3rd Grand Prix of the season and the last before our 5-week gap until Miami. Thank you very much to Alice Powell, to Jenny Gow. We'll see you bright and early Sunday morning, please. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.